Is that the one? Oh, that's the highlighted message. I'm going to read this one off of here, Carmen, because that one's coming through kind of small on my screen. I recently started programming in August of last year. I've learned Python, C Sharp, and Mern, but I still feel I'm not good enough for the basics. I've been stuck in the basics for some time now. I keep doing basic courses in different areas like Udemy, Code Academy, Treehouse, and so on. Is there any advice you can give someone about getting over the idea of thinking I haven't learned the basics and finally feel like I can move on? I think that is an amazing segue into what I originally hold the questions for now, Carmen. I'm going to talk a little bit about imposter syndrome. So we're gonna hold a little bit. Keep asking the questions in chat. Carmen's going to add them to the queue, but I want to kind of address this as a perfect segue into talking about imposter syndrome. That, and I haven't got to use my cool little news layouts that I've been working so hard on here. So, um, let's talk a little bit about imposter syndrome a little bit, because that is something in so everybody who's here either came in from the raid from Al, which I truly appreciate, or they came from David Bomble's video. And welcome to the community. I truly appreciate that. One of the things that I promised everybody when we talked about this is I wanted to kind of give you feedback on the advice that I got out of my DMs, from everybody who's messaging me. And I'll give you, I mean, it's been amazing. I mean, I can't, if you're listening to this either now or on the replay or something like that, thank you so very much for the response that we've gotten from the David video. You know, my DMs both on LinkedIn and Twitter have blown up. I promise I'm doing my best to answer everybody. Just keep with it. You know, obviously we've got thousands of people that have DM'd me, and I'm going to try to respond to all of them. There was one DM that stuck out the most, and it's what inspired me to do a stream on imposter syndrome again. And seeing you ask that question, I want to address that question specifically, right? You know, this individual, the DM that got to me was, it was a person who had messaged me, and they said that, very similar to your story, right? They had a bachelor's in cyber defense. They had taken CEH. They had taken SANS. They had done Try Hack Me and Hack the Box. They had done all this stuff, and they were very, very happy with what it was that they had done, but they wanted a job at the NSA. And their question to me was, what other certs do I need to take to get into NSA, because I don't feel like I'm good enough? And I asked them, I said, well, have you applied yet? And they were like, no, I haven't applied at all. And I was like, well, why haven't you applied? And they're like, because I feel like there's more stuff I need to take. This is what we talk about when we talk about imposter syndrome. And it's very much like what you talk about there. You feel like you're not good enough. And let me be the first to tell you, I, to this day, sitting here in front of you, suffer from imposter syndrome. I would venture to say, and there's a stat that's out there that I found leading into this stream, that 70% of people in the world, not just people in our industry, but people in the world, 70% of the people in the world suffer from imposter syndrome at some point in time in their life. 70%. So, first and foremost, you are not alone. I used to think it was me. I used to think that, God, why do I suck so bad? Why am I so hard on myself? Why don't I feel like I can do this? But understanding that you are in good company, I'm sure everybody in this stream can relate to you having imposter syndrome. Everybody has imposter syndrome. So number one, recognizing that you're not alone is key. Okay. There's different kinds of imposter syndromes. It affects people to varying degrees and in different ways. The medical definition, and I found this kind of leading into this stream, right, is, and this is a quote from the medical journal, the psychological journal, it is pervasive psychological experience believing that you are intellectual frauds and feared being recognized as imposters. People with imposter syndrome suffer from anxiety, fear of failure, and in some cases, dissatisfaction with life. I suffer from imposter syndrome. That is a textbook definition when I get inside of my head of exactly what it is that I go through in my own imposter syndrome. When I started the stream back in July, I had imposter syndrome. Got all these people doing videos. You've got, streamers out there doing this type of stuff. What possibly could I offer to a community that they would want to hear? Ask Carmen Mod. Carmen Mod will tell you. This was a conversation I had with myself for literal weeks up until I hit that start stream button for the first time. Everybody in our industry suffers from it, right? So I think the biggest thing about imposter syndrome is recognizing that it is normal. It is normal to have it. Everybody has it. It is a challenge for everybody in this industry. So I could go on about my imposter syndrome, but I do want to talk about what, if you see any of my past streams, if you saw me on David's video, I like to do things in 3. I came up with 4. I dug deep and I found 4 ways that I would say to deal with imposter syndrome. So, let's kind of break those down. So if you're listening right now, take notes, write this down, clip this. We'll put it up on YouTube later, whatever the case is, but 4 things to do if you have imposter syndrome. First and foremost is reframe your thoughts. So reframe your thoughts. Reframing is really this idea that you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you react to it. Now, that sounds very similar to what we talk about at an incident, right? You never know when you're going to be hacked. You're going to be hacked at some point in time. All you can really control is how you respond to that incident, right? And the same thing happens with imposter syndrome. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you react to it. So if I had hit, I'll go back to my streaming example. I hit start stream, and I had 4 people, I think, turn into that first stream. 2 of them was the iPad I had right here and Carmen Mod in the living room. The other 2 were friends that I coerced into coming into my stream. I could have got down on myself and said, nobody showed up to my first stream. I suck at this. I was right. Nobody wants to watch me. I'm going to go away. But I didn't. Instead, I took that fact that nobody showed up to my stream, and I still put the videos together, and I still put the videos up on YouTube, and I still tried to share them with the community. It's how I reacted to that imposter syndrome that got me to do the next stream and the next series of videos and the next stream and the next series of videos and so forth and so on, to where, I'm on David's stream, David's YouTube channel, talking with somebody as awesome as David, and I've got 150 concurrent viewers for the last 2.5 hours. I mean, I just kept at it. I just reframed my mind and kept going and thought about, how am I going to react to this? How am I going to react to this? How am I going to react to this? So number 1, reframe your mind. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you react to it. So number 2 on imposter syndrome, take action. Take action. Don't spend forever planning and waiting for circumstances to be perfect. Lord knows I do this. I oftentimes talk to folks about the OODA loop. This is a military term as well, right? OODA, OODA loop. It's observe, orient, decide, and act. The decide and act, amazingly, are the hardest parts for most people, right? We all know what it is that we have to do, right? You want a new job, you have to update your resume. You want a new job, you have to go out and apply for a new job. You want to start streaming, you have to sit down and decide you're going to start streaming. We all know what it is that we want to do. We fail at the deciding and the acting part of it. And so I'm here to tell you right now, the second part of imposter syndrome is to act. When you have a thought, act on it. Imposter syndrome presents itself strongest for some people when they give it time to grow. When you're like, well, I'd like to learn bug bounties, right? I'd love to get into bug bounties, but I don't know where to start. And then somebody tells you, well, go sign up for HackerOne, go sign up for Bug Crowd, start getting into that ecosystem and start seeing what it's like to do bug bounties. But then you're like, well, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. Yeah, cool. Thanks. Yeah, I'll check out HackerOne and Bug Bounty or Bug Crowd. And then you wait. And then you're like, well, I could go do that, but I don't think I'm good enough to do that yet. Right? Has anybody ever done that? Shake your head, raise your hand. If you've ever said, well, I'll embark on that adventure, but I'm not going to do it right now because I need to learn a little bit more just yet. Right? Don't do that. If you say, I want to learn X, go to YouTube, search for the video, find the video, start learning it right there. If you want to do bug bounties, right now, if you are listening to this stream and you have an interest in bug bounties and you are not signed up for HackerOne, BugCrowd, or Cobalt.io, go do it right now. Because that is the easiest way for you to get started. Okay? Is to sign up, take action, go do it. Okay? This guy on LinkedIn, male or female that I talked to on LinkedIn, who said this to me, when he told me all this stuff, I literally said to him, I sent him the link. I went to the NSA's website. I found the link for an open position for a cyber warfare operator. I sent it to him and I said, I want you to go apply for this right now. Stop what it is you're doing. Click on this link. Go apply for a cyber operator job right now. You have the qualifications. That is what you have to do. So number 2, take action. Number 3 on our imposter syndrome list, right? Acknowledge your contributions. You are here. You are participating. You are showing up. I say this all the time to folks. Show up, right? Acknowledge your contributions. Think back to the last task or role that you were ever assigned where you might have felt like an imposter, right? You know, maybe you went on a pen test with a bunch of other folks and you felt like they were so much better than you. Maybe you were on an incident. I had an incident responder who worked for me one time. There was a big incident at the organization, and there were people who were in the code. They were writing scripts. They were threat hunting. They were doing all this stuff. And this incident responder was like, I suck. I can't do what these guys do. I don't know that I'll ever be able to learn what these guys do. And it was imposter syndrome just flagrantly coming through because he was looking at them and gauging himself. But you have to look at that and you have to say, what were your contributions in that scenario? And I sat down with him and I said, but you led the incident. You kept everybody organized. You made sure that the incident made it through the process to closure. You contributed to how we reported to management, right? Acknowledge your contributions so that you know that you did something instead of comparing yourself to the people and thinking you're not good enough because of them. And then last but not least, so the fourth thing, the last thing we'll talk about on imposter syndrome is keep pushing. Just like the comment that I made about the CTFs, right? Keep learning from your mistakes and keep pushing the bounds and keep growing. If you go to a CTF and you don't solve a challenge, don't stop going to CTFs. If you go to a CTF and don't finish challenge, go to 10 more CTFs until you do solve a challenge, right? Go to Google and learn what it was that you should have learned to solve the challenge. Go to Hack the Box. If you can't get past the first layer of Hack the Box, go to Google, read other people's write-ups, go to YouTube, watch other people's videos on that Hack the Box challenge, and learn from your mistakes. Because when you go and you do that CTF again, you won't be starting from the scratch. You'll be starting 30%, 50%, 90% of the way through. You'll be successful. You have to keep pushing. And sometimes, trust me, you have to dig deep. You have to dig deep to keep pushing. I had a moment over the break where we took a break from streaming because of the holidays. I had a moment where my imposter syndrome was starting to convince me never to stream again. That's how deep imposter syndrome can go. I want you to let that sink in. I'm sitting here talking to you, and I had a moment not more than 2 or 3 weeks ago where my imposter syndrome was telling me I should stop streaming. Right? It will get to you, but if you do these 4 things, focus on these 4 things, Write them down, put them on the whiteboard next to your desk, do these 4 things, reframe your mind. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how to react. Take action. Don't just procrastinate. When you think you want to do something, step up and do it. Acknowledge your contributions. You have done something awesome in your life. You've done something awesome in this career field. You showed up for school. You showed up for class. You showed up for the CTF. You showed up for the cert. You did something to get to where you are today. Acknowledge that contribution. And then 4th, keep pushing. Keep pushing. So with all that being said, that's kind of my take on the imposter syndrome stuff. With that, I will open it back up to questions. Sorry, Carmen, I hit my transition button at the same time that you pushed that question through. You can push that question through now. Thank you very much. Reframe your thought and mind. You can't control. Yep, there you go. Take action. Yep, acknowledge your contribution. Keep pushing. Keep challenging yourself. Don't give up. Awesome. Fantastic summarization of it. Dayo, thank you very much for that. And you are 100% correct. How do you differentiate from imposter syndrome and being overly confident? Maybe we really aren't ready and we think it's the syndrome talking in my head and I get cocky. Let's talk about ego a little bit, right? And I've written about this. If you're following me on LinkedIn, go look at the article that I wrote like 2 or 3 years ago or so about toxicity in cybersecurity. That's what I think is the difference between imposter syndrome and overconfidence. What I think has led to the massive amount of imposter syndrome that we have in cybersecurity is we have too much ego in cybersecurity. I'll take a jab at OffSec for this one. I hate with a passion the try harder mentality. Let me say that again with a little bit more sting to it. I despise the try harder mentality. I think the community, for the most part, has taken the try harder mentality and turned it into one of the most toxic statements of our time. And if you've ever taken OSCP and you've been in the IRC channel and you've gone in there and tried to ask a question that you thought was a legitimate question and they turn around and tell you to try harder, that's exactly the type of toxicity that I've talked about. Because it doesn't matter what question you ask, or at least the 2 OSCPs that I've taken. I took a pen testing with Backtrack and pen testing with Callie, right? You could go in there and ask a legitimate question that you've researched up one side, down and down the other, and they would tell you to try harder. That to me is a level of egotism and toxicity that I think plagues our industry. And I've talked extensively about this. And so I want everybody here to be confident. I want everybody here to know their shit, right? When you know something, I want you to know it. And so part of that, acknowledging your contributions, that's that confidence that we're talking about. Acknowledge that you're smart, right? Acknowledge that you know what it is that you're talking about. You are where you are because of what you've done. Acknowledge that, right? That's the confidence that I want everybody here listening to me to have. Don't let that ego turn into a toxic ego where when somebody asks you, how do I get into cybersecurity? You're like, don't ask me that. Go to Google. Go Google it, right? Don't do that. When they say, well, how do I use Nmap? Be like, go try harder. That's where I think you cross from being confident to being toxically egotistical. That's what I think we need less of in our industry. Soapbox down. Whoops, push it again, Carmen. I pressed the button because I wasn't sure what you're doing. This is my first time here. This is high quality stream. Really appreciate this emotion energy right now. Thank you so much, Java Grunt. Catch us here 3 days a week. We have guests frequently. If you're tuning in, if you haven't heard my speech before, we have guests frequently. I've got a co-host that comes in with me on Wednesday. And if you think I'm funny and you think I've got energy, wait till Jeff gets on here. Him and I go at it for hours. It's crazy fun. We're gonna have the former CISO of Splunk on here on the 27th, where we line up guests frequently. I'm all the time hunting for guests on the show, bringing you the most diverse, inclusive, expert opinions and points of view that we can find out here 3 days a week. Don't miss it. Jeff and Neil and alcohol is a good time. Don't talk about that, Cyber Roflo. That is that which shall not be mentioned. Hey, just want to thank you. I did not know I even knew what I felt was imposter syndrome. I'd not felt this term before. I'm glad I could help you be aware of it. Acknowledging the problem and being aware of it is, the number one thing. And so now that you know about it, take Neil's 4, lessons, write them down, apply them, defeat your imposter syndrome. Here's what I want to do. I want stories. I'm going to start up a channel. I'm gonna start up a success channel in Discord. We're gonna add this on the to-do list. Success in Discord. If anybody wants to tell their story on how they've beaten imposter syndrome, hit that exclamation point Discord. Make sure you're in our Discord channel. We're gonna start up a Discord confessional inside of Discord. I encourage everybody who's defeated their imposter syndrome to go into that Discord channel, talk about how you've defeated that imposter syndrome, and then I want to see everybody in this community acknowledge that person and congratulate them for defeating that imposter syndrome. That is how we're going to make the community a better place. So I'm glad you recognize it. Let's get some movement behind it. This is the mental health issue of our cybersecurity time, is making sure that we can defeat this imposter syndrome.